How did Iran went from a country who cannot defend itself to a country that everyone does not want to dare with in the Middle East? Even the almighty chosen people who have been chosen by God to do whatever evil they want to do on earth. This goes far back as it goes. Iran was a country in the 1950s that is doing nothing to harm anybody, but a country that is the land of opportunities for anyone in and out to come and live in peace and develop their skills. Now, the Americans saw that Iran has a natural resources which any country on earth that has it, America will take to that country freedom and democracy. The Iranians were on their own. Americans brought in a CIA trained puppet to start leading Iran, to start ruling Iran with iron fist. This man started ruling Iran with iron fist, despite the fact that the Iranians are dying of starvation, and he keeps on throwing large parties. The Iranians were fed up. They went to the polls and voted in a leader who will come in and start transforming the country. His name is Mossadegh. Mossadegh came in, started reforming Iran, but the very big mistake he made was he nationalized the Iranian oil, meaning he took the oil out of the hands of the Americans and put it in the hands of the Iranians. That move provokes the Americans. The Americans now orchestrated a coup to take out Mossadegh. When they took out Mossadegh, they now brought in Reza Pahlavi as the sole ruler of Iran. The Iranians became very furious. What they did was they started revolting against the leader under the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini. Ayatollah Khomeini became the leader. When he became the leader, remember, the Americans funded the Iraqis because they do not want to go to war with the Iranians because Iran is very large for the Americans to invade alone. So they used the Iraqis as a puppet. They funded the Iraqis, they gave the Iraqis all weapons the Iraqis need. But America has one technique that's only when you can connect the dots you can understand. What they did was, as they are funding the Iraqis, they are also giving the Iranians weapons because they will want the war to continue. As the war continues, they are going to keep plundering the natural resources out of the country as they wish. They are giving the Iranians few weapons and giving the Iraqis more weapons in order to keep the war going. Giving the Iranians the same weapon as the Iraqis, it is going to mean that the Iranians are going to outrun the Iraqis within a matter of days or months. Now, the Iranians were being unalived. It was more of a genocide than a war. But the Americans and the West kept quiet because what is going on in Iran is exactly what they want. I don't know if you understand. Now, the Iranians were being unalived. Remember, the war lasted for almost 8 years because the war started in September 1980 and ended in around August 1988. Do you understand? The war kept on going, even to the length that the Americans gave Iraq under Saddam Hussein chemical weapons to use against the Iranians, which is a pure violation of international law and a war crime. But the Americans and the West still kept quiet. Do you understand? Now, during that course of 8 years that war was going, Iran have been to basically every country begging them for weapons just to defend themselves. Every country turned a blind eye. Every country refused to help the Iranians. They allowed the Iranians to be murdered on industrial scale. They allowed the genocide to continue on industrial scale. Nobody came to the aid of the Iranians. Now, after the war, the Iranians understood that for Iran to exist, to continue to exist on earth, they have to find a means to defend themselves. That is where the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini started manufacturing weapons. They started building weapons from scratch, from ground level, in order to be able to defend Iran, to prevent a further reoccurrence of such genocide. Do you understand? That is how the Iranians have been building weapons to defend themselves throughout history. Gotten to this point, America never gave up trying to see that Iran falls. They kept on doing everything possible to see the downfall of Iran. And guess what? The Iranians refused to stop building weapons to defend themselves. Do you understand? That is why you see in recent days the Americans and the Benjamin Netanyahu, the Americans, sorry, the Dom Pakistanis under the leadership of, under the compulsion of Benjamin Netanyahu through Epstein files, is forcing the Americans to force the Iranians to abandon their missile projects, to abandon their nuclear program. Do you understand? So the Iranians didn't just started building weapons out of the blue to intimidate anybody. Rather, they started building the weapons because they have been through a genocide which could have been prevented if any other country on earth have rendered them help of weapons to defend themselves. But nobody did. That is why they took upon themselves to build weapons to defend themselves. Iran has the right to defend itself, just as every other country has the right to defend itself on earth.